Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of The Next Battle. Today I'm glad to be sitting down with SUMA and just talking a bit about some of the things that he's done in regards to community engagement and event organization in SoCal. So, without further ado, SUMA, could you introduce yourself and also share any social media pages just here early on so people can know where to find you?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. My name is Nick Sumabat, coming from North San Diego, also called SoCal Suma. I am an event organizer for Fullerton Fights, which is located in North Orange County. But I also frequent like other areas of SoCal, basically like Orange County down to yeah, I'll count that. Down to like SD proper. It's more like assisting from down there, but like I actually own and run Fullerton Fights.
Hmm. So, just in terms of the community itself, could you tell people how you first got into Tekken and your first community engagement there? Like, did you start off going to any particular locals or things like that?
Yeah, so actually you you sent me a list of questions before and
Mhm.
I thought about it and I just wanted to clarify. Did you want me to answer like my first exposure to Tekken
Oh
or do you mean
yeah,
like for
tell
Tekken
us
7?
whatever you'd like to in regards to like how you got into the game. I know when I spoke with Piggy, he told me all about how even from the more casual early experiences with like the PS1 Tekkens, how he at least had that sort of understanding of the game, but just, from your first experiences in the community, I guess, like how you got engaged with the more like competitive side of things, I suppose. Just where you began like starting to the point that you are at now, like what really began that growth.
Okay. Well, my beginnings with Tekken are actually quite silly but productive from like a parenting point of view. Um, for me, my parents had a rather like health-oriented like way of raising me up, and we had a PS2, um, which meant I also had Tekken 5. Why am I skipping that part? Owning Tekken 5 wasn't that important. What was important was having access to Tekken 5. Um, so what my parents would do is that they would take me to the park. And the parks in the area that I grew up in were like very safe. The city I grew up in was called Cerritos, and it was known as the Bubble. Um, and so they would like literally just put me out there with a bunch of other kids, but there would be like a little like side quest goal
Mhm.
that they would make me do. Every time I was able to do something, like climb the monkey bars or like sprint, I ended up being like a track runner. Um, from first grade onwards, my parents would let me play on the PS2 for like an extra 5 minutes, and you might be thinking like 5 minutes, that's it. But you're a kid, so it's like
It
that's
feels
that's
like a lot.
everything, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and my upbringing was also very like heavily academic based. So anytime that wasn't like me crying over math was Tekken 5.
Mhm.
Um, so I would play Tekken 5 as a kid. You know, I'm just a scrub. I'm in second grade. I'd be like, "Hey, I can't beat Jinpachi, Dad. How do I do this?" And he doesn't know either, you know.
Mhm.
Um, but like he does it for me. And basically from then on, like that's how I was introduced to like the game itself. When it came to like improving, my dad couldn't teach me anything, but he was like the perfect example of like you don't know something, you ask someone. And he always was like, "Well, you could always like do a low here." And I'd be like, "What's a low?" You know what I mean? Or he'd teach me like a generic grab, something that you just wouldn't grasp as an
Right.
elementary school kid. Um, and then from then on forth, just very casual exposures from like Tekken 5, Vanilla, never had DR, Tekken 6, which I think I got in middle school. I know it was very late to Tekken 6. Um, that was 2011 for me.
Mhm.
I got Tekken 6 and Tekken Tag Tournament 2 at the same time. I think on like a birthday. Um, and I spent like most of my time playing Tekken Tag Tournament 2, like very casually in high school until I met a friend. some people know him. His name is like Zen Lotus. It was like I was a freshman, he was a senior, and like I'd be like, yeah, I play tag 2, and be like, you know frame data, and I'd be like, what the fuck?
Right.
What the heck is frame data? And he would try to explain it to me, but I'm not the fastest learner,
Mm.
so I would just be like, yeah, that makes sense. It
A
never made
lot of
sense.
numbers.
Until I met him again in college, and that's when I started getting to Tekken 7. So for Tekken 7, the game had been out for about a year and a half. Um, I graduated high school when Tekken 7 came. No, I take that back. I was about to graduate high school when Tekken 7 came out. So it was like my graduating year of high school. I was a senior. Um, but I never owned the game. So everything from Tag 2 that I ended up learning online from like Eris, um, from Little Majin. I ended up watching like Little Majin tournaments on vacation or tournament runs on vacation. Again, wasn't able to make sense of it. I applied that to Tekken 7 and be like, "Hey, how come this doesn't work?" And they would be like, "Because this is a completely different game." Um, and people ended up guiding me um, from what we know now as SoCal Tekken, a Discord server that was run by Level Up Your Game,
Mhm.
encompassing like all of SoCal from San Diego up to basically like Antelope Valley. And if you don't know how far that is, that's basically like two states.
Gotcha.
I think from yeah, I would say like from bottom to top of Texas. I
All
would
right.
say that's a good comparison. Um, and I think the main drive there was going to Wednesday night fights.
Mhm.
And at Wednesday night fights, that's where I met that friend again, Zen Lotus, who ended up like actually teaching me. He would be like, "Yeah, we'll just play Wi-Fi PS4 because it's all you had, you know. Like that's I'm broke. I'm a college student." And he would be like, "Yeah, this is how you deal with like this situation." He was a king main, but he played like a whole bunch of characters against me because I was brand new.
Mhm.
And I jumped characters. I jumped like from Kazuya, which I thought was cool. Dragonov, Master Raven. Ended up playing Lee for about like 3 years before I made a recent change to Kuma and Jack. Um, and so that was my introduction to the Tekken scene. But I can most definitely attribute my biggest contributions to the collegiate FGC,
Gotcha.
um, which was like an unofficial like all Cal State or like University of California like fighting game players like come here, hosted by none other than Cal Poly Pomona, you know the home of Evo Moment 37. Um, Pretty cool. I like pretty much everyone there. I didn't have like any issues with them. You know, very relatable. Everyone was about the same age, which was vastly different from SoCal Tekken, because in SoCal Tekken the age ranged from like me to like Suiken, you know. um, and that I ended up spending most of my time definitely playing with other college students,
Yeah.
exposing myself to like different mindsets, different events run by them, because you know, college esports that's been a very like recent growing thing,
Mhm.
um, and participating in my local scene, which was known as Dropkick Mondays.
Gotcha.
Every week I went to Dropkick Mondays. It was so cool in Huntington Beach.
So thinking about just that SoCal Tekken scene, and I know you mentioned going to like WNFs, which I feel like at this point where we are now, it feels like sort of a relic of like the past and like
Oh my
early
God.
T7 because I know so often people would be either watching the Wednesday brackets that they sometimes had at NLBC or later on watching WNF, like late at night for me on the East Coast, always watching those, and definitely seeing that just sort of I wouldn't say age gap, but like just the variety of competitors there from really the old heads as you had mentioned to the newer generation. And so thinking about that and how tournaments had grown in the region, could you tell me a bit about how you got invested in actually running things and just more on that side of the community engagement rather than just solely focusing on competing?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, so as I mentioned before, Dropkick Mondays was my weekly event.
Hmm.
It took place in South Orange County. Actually, no, it's like Central Orange County, but it's like coastal, in Huntington Beach, right across from my college. And I would go to class for like my nursing stuff because I have an emphasis in healthcare.
Hmm.
And as soon as I was done, before I went back up north, I would stop at this warehouse location. Uh, and the warehouse location was called like Ultimate or Ults Media Ventures. It wasn't too big. It was primarily a uh, first-person shooter place. Um, and I would meet with a really small group of people that I ended up like really coming close to. People like Hated Greatness. If you don't know who Hated Greatness is an OG like fighting game player from Louisiana. Came down, lived in Fullerton just for a bit. I believe he's back out there. Um, who like took a no nonsense approach to
Hmm.
TOing. That was his biggest thing. It's like I do not want to be here for 4 hours for an 8-man bracket. You know,
Hmm.
he would always get mad at like new TOs, like people who would fill in for him when he was unavailable, and say like that's unacceptable. That's not cool. And then there were like other people like Ziggy Boggy. Um, uh, Most prominently, it was Fox. And Fox was the person who ran the fighting game. Well, Fox and Alias Lane, who ran the fighting game part of Dropkick Mondays. Um, and my involvement really came from like hanging out with them and asking like, "Hey, are you guys going to be like doing this event? Are you guys going to be doing this event? Do you guys need help?" Because I really like how they treated me as a new player, someone who like just came out of class. They would always watch me. As soon as I was done with class, I'd always be doing my homework, and then bracket would start, and I would play, and then I'd like ask like, "Hey, how are things going?" And asking that enough times eventually led to like, this is how like the tournament works.
Right.
And so Fox would show me the bracket. He would show me like start.gg. Back then it was called smash.gg. Um, and Hated Greatness would do the same. And basically I would just like follow to the best of my ability. And that carried on from Dropkick Mondays in Huntington Beach down to, I can't recall, I think it was called Thursday. No, no. I think it was a Saturday event. It was in Lakewood, so back home where I used to live in Cerritos.
Hmm.
Um, and then to like other conventions because that's just what they did. Dropkick Events was a fighting game place where they like took their fighting games and their PS4s and they just went around.
Hmm.
Um, which they got more recognition for what they did, but time is time, things
Yeah.
change. And so at some point, I ended up volunteering to do these things to end up supporting setting up bracket. Sorry, not bracket. Setting up the events, showing up early when I could, taking out the PS4s, putting the discs in, setting up the monitors at the end of the night before we went to go get tacos, because that ended up being a very ritualistic thing. So we go to tournament, we all go eat together afterwards. Taking down, making sure that the venue doesn't like ding us for
Hmm.
leaving equipment behind. Um, and when the pandemic hit, that wasn't a thing anymore. I didn't want to do online events, and there was one opportunity where a new venue where I'm currently at, I've been at for more than a year, called Localhost in Fullerton, like opened up. Like this, never heard of that place before. I take that back. The first one I did hear of was in Oceanside, which is North San Diego, where I'm currently at right now. Um, and they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna open up in Fullerton," and that's when I had like caught wind that like, okay, there is gonna be one in Fullerton.
Hmm.
But prior to the Fullerton, prior to Oceanside, never heard of it before. Um, I only heard of the company that owns it, Nerd Street Gaming, which I think was like a proponent in sponsoring Frosty Faustings at some point.
Hmm.
I think. But yeah, so I had friends in North County at the time. North County FGC was like the friendliest. They referred to me as Suma, but also by my first name a lot, so I felt like an actual human connection.
Right.
I'd been referred to as Suma since like high school, because of my name. You know, it's actually my name. Not Soka so much as Suma. And we spoke with the person there at localhost Fullerton, the first manager, because things change.
Right.
Um, and he was very happy to have events at his venue, and with a very welcoming entrance to the scene, I started up Fullerton Fights with the cumulative experience that I got from Dropkick Mondays, from North County San Diego FGC, which ran Thursday throwdowns and like other events. Really tight group of people. From Collegiate FGC, Hated Greatness, all of them like led to me running Fullerton Fights in January of 2021. It was
Gotcha.
2020. Yeah, it was 2021.
Gotcha. I know that for a time there, it felt a bit, I wouldn't say shaky, but there was just a lot of moving pieces after I guess the worst part of the pandemic and in relation to offline events and stuff whenever things actually started coming back up again and new opportunities obviously arose with your events and whatnot. But
Mhm.
just thinking about going from more of that side of being exposed to the tournament organization side of things, like your first understanding of how that would work to actually being able to run your own events, could you possibly share anything that you feel people may not recognize about the TOing side? Or like if somebody wanted to organize their own events, things that you feel like your eyes weren't open to before that now you're like, this is the way it works?
Yeah, yeah. My opening statement on that is straight up: TOs are broke. Like we, if you're not part of an organization already or like a business, if you're someone like me who ends up being contracted to venues because like you want to run events there and there's like a liability if you don't sign a contract. If you don't have a support, you're paying out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I told you before, as a college student, I got that PS4. I was on Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have actually a PS4 up until like that year and a half after Tekken 7 came out, right? Like, and you think about like for Tekken 8, PS5 is coming out. That shit's mad expensive.
Right.
Um,
It's actually
you,
something I was wanting to ask you about a bit as well, but go on.
oh yeah, yeah. So all that stuff together, you try to run a setup. I know the minimum that you would want for a good local, for like, or at least that I've seen,
Mm-hmm.
is one stream setup or recording setup if you want. That's how North County is doing it right now. They can't stream on Twitch because they don't have access to Wi-Fi. Um, and two non-stream setups, right? And PS5 doesn't have a Slim out right now, but PS4 did. You get a bunch of Slims. You get like three Slims. You get three copies of Tekken 7. The later you start, the worse it is because you got to buy like DLC. Um, but even then, you got to think of the investment. Like, oh, if I'm gonna be a TO, I have to be able to afford DLC for like three different machines, three different accounts. Um, and then travel, keeping everything up. Monitors, I think monitors is the hardest one, right? Because you got to keep like the monitors consistent, right? Like if you have, it's funny because I had seen this at Wednesday Night Fights. At Wednesday Night Fights, they would allow you to bring like your PS4 uh, and a monitor, but at some point in their thing, they were able to provide monitors. Um, and sometimes the monitors would be like mismatchy, right? Like there would be like one that's an Acer and then one that's like a BenQ, um, and it would feel off. If you're starting small and you want to be like consistent, or if you don't really care, like don't listen to this advice. But like if you do want to be consistent, then like you get three of like the same monitors so that the tournament experience is like the same for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you calculate all that, that's actually I'm just gonna put it into like college perspective. That's a month's rent. You know what I mean? Um, the PS4, the monitor, the game. If you're focusing on like multiple games, that's more money in your wallet. TOs are broke, and some people just straight up don't recognize that. Some people would be like, "Hey, how come like you do this? How come like you do it this certain way?" It's because these are like the means that we have access to. and they go through like a lot of different other things outside of that. Like I mentioned before, the contracting thing, so that like I don't end up viable for like say if someone ends up hurt at like oh I take that back, so that the venue doesn't get like super viable. Um, if someone gets hurt at my event, um, negotiating with like other places saying like, hey, is it okay if I run this event? Oh, I guess this probably only applies to SoCal because of like how many regions we have.
Right.
But negotiating with other TOs in our region saying like, hey, I don't want to like step toes over here and I'm like less than an hour drive. Or do you plan on doing like this event on this date? You know, scheduling that stuff. Which is how SoCal Tekken is organized, by the way. We have 7 big regions, based on like county. Um, and we primarily have monthly events because if you do it weekly, everybody's gonna get burnt out. Everybody's gonna end up being broke. Especially like if they're top players in the scene. Like they come in there for like sharks, dude. They'll come in and like grab your money. Um, Being able to seed that is like an extra thing as a TO in SoCal. I don't know if like other places are able to do that. I imagine if it's NLBC and like majority is like within a 45-minute radius. I'm taking a guess here. I actually don't know the demographic of NLBC. But say like you make like a 45-minute drive down there, it's all relatively like simple. You just like go based on results.
Hmm.
I'm out here, I get the results, right? We start a new seating like at the beginning of the year. And then I also make sure that like the 5 people who run or not run, who like carpool together, don't fight each other round one,
Hmm.
right? Like I'm making sure. If you look at the, you can't. I don't think so. I actually posted this on Twitter. If you look at the constraints that I wrote for every individual player, that was like 78 in total because of like the region. So I had to like write all these things in start.gg and press resolve, say like, hey, these people can't play each other because that would suck. And then this dude was first place last time, and this guy was second place. And if they have to play each other round one, that would suck. You know, like that's those are like the struggles as a TO that I feel like people need to um, be able to put into perspective. Is that I'm not just a business. I'm actually not really a business. I don't think I don't think I can file as one. We're not really like a business. We're not like a single entity because Fulton Fights has Guilty Gear and Melty Blood. Shout outs to Dr. No and Boardman. We're people. We we engage in the community. And if we suck at engaging in the community, if we suck at engaging in like speaking with other people from other communities, it's just not a fun time. So I'm not saying TOs are people pleasers. Absolutely not. Hit of Greatness was not a people pleaser at all. I'm saying that they have to work hard to get events like this run.
So,
And luckily, I haven't run into people who were like extremely rude towards me or like anything like that. But I've run into people who treat other TOs that way, and you know, I don't want that repeated. In a lot of my experiences, I don't want that repeated.
I think it's certainly admirable the kind of things that you have to go through, whether it's with consistency in the equipment or seating, and especially thinking about those competitors who might just simply go to an event, not really think about who it's being run by or the sort of atmosphere that's being provided, but just going wanting to compete. It's definitely something that shouldn't go unnoticed from the effort that you put in, but you are also able to see those competitors just make progress over time, and especially compared to the older generation that you'd see at like WNF, as you had mentioned, to the newer players. What can you tell me about those newer players that you've seen just constantly grinding and trying to improve? What are your thoughts on your scene's presence within competitive Tekken overall?
So I'm very proud to say that like the SoCal Tekken fighting game community, um, constantly just brings themselves up. You'll run into like a lot of new players. I ran into like one new player this past Saturday who made top 8. Or not past Saturday. I think it was last Saturday. This past Saturday was yesterday. Um, so And, like I'd never heard of this dude. His name was like Mo, and like he ended up beating Armaku, and I'm like, who's this man, right? Like, there's you'll get like people who come out the works like that, who I've never seen before in any of the locals. I've been to every single local in Southern California except for one, and that's in the desert, and it's in a casino. I'm going there on vacation one day. There's no other reason I'm going out there. Um, and so you'll see like new people like that come out you've never seen before. Really strong players who like stuck to online. There's this guy I know from San Diego. His name was Kyron. He recently came out like when the San Diego proper tournament came out, not the North County one, the Synchronicity one. And his he never I think he never played in a tournament before, but he played in Tag 2. The only reason he came out, he played ranked all the time, and his internet was out for 4 days. So you'll see some surprise people like that. For people that I've known for a long time, I started playing when just Andy started playing. Like we were homies. I started with just Andy, Mar, and Gelatin, right? Those three we would go to Dropkick Mondays every Monday, pretty much. And just Andy was like always really good, but he always consistently got better. I don't know if you know him. He's the SoCal King player.
Mm-hmm.
We're about the same age. People like him. Dr. The Jake Man. You may have seen him place in ICFC.
Oh yeah.
He's not a real doctor. He lied to me on that one.
I think his Twitter bio. I think it says otherwise, but jury might still be out.
Yeah, totally. The MD makes it like really legit at the end. um, but yeah, so, and I think the most prominent one right now, I said prominent like probably 3 times this podcast. That's not the best example for me. Is Pots and Pans. He's a new kid, right? I'm pretty sure I could beat him when he got into the scene about like a year ago in Riverside. And he made second place at Fullerton Fights, and I believe second place, I'm pretty sure, at Sidestep Saturdays last Saturday. So in the 6 month span, you'll see players like that grow, and it's not just like them. Those are only like a few off the head examples. There are plenty of really good players that really just work with other good players in SoCal because we have a huge pool of players to pick from. You get like a lot of matchup experience. And overall, on average, the performance of SoCal Tekken over time, because of how strong our community is, has only been going up. You'll see people joke like, living in SoCal Tekken will make you worse. I think that's like the very top side of things. You know what I mean? Right. Like when people joked about speed kicks.
Yeah.
But like
it definitely sounds like a rising tide lifts all ships sort of scenario there.
Exactly.
Now, thinking a bit ahead, past just where we are now, and especially as the future of Tekken is just sort of looming with the more that we hear about Tekken 8. What are your thoughts on just the future of your events, and are there any particular aspirations that you have in mind regarding how you want to run things or potentially grow things?
I have so many ideas. At Fullerton Fights, we've done the team events, which we ended up doing. It was a 3v3 team event modeled after Strong Style. And we collaborated with Sidestep Saturdays, where our first place 3v3 team played against their first place 3v3 team, and both the TO of Sidestep Saturdays, Brandini, and I pitched in to get prizes, like 3 prizes for the winning team. So that's one example. We did the Tag 2 tournament. This month is February. It's Lovers Month. You know, we got a couple of couples out here. Shout outs to Palacosi and Redleaf, the married couple of SoCal that go everywhere together. I plan on running another Tag 2 or Tekken 2v2 event. I'm waiting to make that announcement real soon. Keep an eye on my Twitter. Oh, I didn't mention my socials, but I'll probably do that at the end.
We can get back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have like all these different ideas of what I want to do. Tekken 7, Tekken 8, but I'm a monthly event and I'm still a college student, so it's like, where's that execution gonna go? I have like this notepad of like different things. There was actually a really cool idea that I saw from Trojan. I don't know if you know Trojan.
Oh yeah, everybody should.
Huh?
Trojan from Texas.
Yeah, the Texas
Yeah,
player.
yeah. I was saying everybody in the community at this point should know of Trojan.
Yeah,
But he's
it's
definitely
super
been doing
cool.
a lot of different things.
He recently did a side bracket for his event. It was a Tekken 8 characters only for
Mhm.
Tekken 7. And I thought, that's cool. Dude,
Right.
what? How come I never thought of that? I want to try that out. But I don't want to steal ideas. The biggest thing I'm going to steal is that he called losers bracket lovers bracket, which
Nice.
that's pretty smart.
So thinking
um,
about the future and as I had said, the future of Tekken moving into the next battle of Tekken 8. What are some of the things that you feel like might be challenges with implementing tournaments for this game? I mean, obviously, I've been thinking about it a lot, how it feels like there's sort of this gray area of the platform itself that I feel like a TO like yourself would be a bit more constantly aware of that. So could you just give me your thoughts on how that shift to a new game might impact running events and trying to implement maybe different ideas and whatnot?
yeah, so I mentioned in the beginning, I'm gonna mention it again. Equipment is like one of the biggest problems if you want to start off as a local. Of course, you could always like borrow. And we do get support from other locals out here. Shout outs to Antelope Valley, AV Tekken Underground. They usually pull in with their equipment. We always give them a discount for showing up, and they provide setups to places that they want to go to, namely Sites of Saturdays, namely Fullerton Fights, uh, and their bi-weekly events. So we have a network of people that we can reach out to that do have access early on because community, you know.
Mhm.
But the challenge is if you want to start, if you want an early start in the game, that's the biggest one is getting the rules set up. I would say, like you know how Guilty Gear, how they're first to threes everywhere.
Mhm.
It's kind of like that. I doubt Tekken 7 or Tekken 8 is going to be like that. We're probably still going to keep it to first to two, but that's a possibility. We don't know the pacing of Tekken 8. We don't know exactly how things are going to run, especially when the game is designed to be a lot more aggressive,
Mhm.
right? So things could change in the rule set. That's one. Uh, and then aside from that, it's like, what if they pull a Nintendo and they have like reservations on what could stream? Now we're FGC. We don't care, but like the possibility of a cease and desist very early on when they want to like do certain things is very possible. Like the possibility is not zero.
Mhm.
Um, getting, I guess, introducing the idea of a new game to a venue is another issue. And what do I mean by that? Melty Blood type Lumpia. Right? Like that game was popular on release. Actually, no, better example, DNF Duel.
Mhm.
That game was super popular on release, right? Very recent. And the venues were like, yeah, we'll try it. Like some of them waited. They waited like about a month, I would say, just to see how numbers went like on Twitch, on like YouTube. Some people like really do their research when it comes to like their venue. Other people don't care. Like if you go to a bar, they don't care. Um, and they'll be like, "Hey, this is doing fine," and then you get something like super unbalanced gameplay, some like a lot of players not being happy and complaining about it, and you try it out for a week, and by then the hype has gone down, and you don't have a tournament, or you do have a tournament, but it's probably going to be like three people, and the venue's going to think like, "Oh, that's not worth it."
Mhm.
So early on things are unpredictable with the game, with the community, with the venue space, things like that that could really make or break um, the tournament lifespan. Uh, and people love Tekken 7, right? So I don't think that day one or week one tournaments are gonna like go terribly. I imagine that the earlier you are, the better you are for running events. You're gonna see a lot of people if you are the first one to have PS4s. The second issue with that, aside from the fact that you have to afford PS4s, is the availability. Oh, sorry,
The
not
PS5?
PS4s,
Yeah,
PS5s. Might be
you got it.
is the availability of PS5s, and only recently did we find this out, but there are PS5s being sold as a bundle in Walmarts.
Hmm.
Like I think we found this out last month or like a month and a half ago. Um, and I would say the last problem with that is if they don't come out with a new PS5 like Slim, for example, because it's a high risk to purchase a release console. And what do I mean by that? Red Ring of Death. That's the easiest one. And for people that were like recently getting into like gaming and don't know what the Red Ring of Death is, it's when an Xbox would start up, but then the boot sequence would be like giga fucked up, and so it would just keep on looping like I'm turning on, I'm turning off, I'm turning on, I'm turning off, but it can't sustain itself. So you have issues like that, or maybe like the PS3, um, not the Slim, like the OG one where I think you would like put a disc in and it would shut itself off. I think that's what it was.
I'm not sure.
Um, yeah, it's a long ass thing. PS3 was not my my competitive era. Um, but early release consoles come with their risks. Granted, the PS5 has been out for about a year now, and I think the biggest problem we've had was input lag compared to PS4. Um, and new features like digital only, right? Uh, the digital issue with Tekken 7 was if you had Tekken 7 the disc versus Tekken 7 the digital copy of that, you could only have one or the other at a time, and so you'd have to uninstall one to reinstall the other. And if your digital copy was messed up and you didn't have internet, then you'd have to put in the disc copy of Tekken 7, and then you'd have to let that one update, and that just messes with your tournament. So things like that, unpredictabilities, early release, those are the problems and difficulties I could imagine coming from the release of Tekken 8 from a tournament standpoint.
I just thinking about it, and especially with the things that you've shared, it just feels like a lot of things are up in the air regarding that. I know that some people had suggested possibly running brackets on PC, and I know that opens up a whole new can of worms based on
Oh,
drivers and whatnot. I know that
that's
Sam Show
mhm.
now is trying to convert to Xbox, that they offer converters to players, but I just feel like
Mhm.
so much of this just seems really unpredictable with things.
I
But
would
oh,
say
sorry, go on.
for Tekken 8, if they release it on PC, that's gonna be so scary for me.
Mhm.
And the reason why is because I think Fullerton Fights was the first all PC um, Tekken 7 event in the nation.
Oh
I
wow,
don't
I didn't
know,
even know that.
right? I don't know if any other place had like tournament standard PCs. Localhost Fullerton is a PC cafe.
Mhm.
And so when we first reached out to them, we ran Tekken 7 all on PC. And we were like, this is fine. But even if they are a high spec, PC port of Tekken 7 is not the best. It's not consistent. It has its stuttering issues. It ran into issue when we were like recording or not recording, when we were streaming, right? For a PS4, that doesn't have to compute any of that. Like you just bypass using a uh, uh, capture card and then you stream from like another PC. But when everything's on PC, then that messed with like how information traveled throughout the entity of that case. You know what I mean? Like it goes through like the CPU goes through the RAM, and you know like Tekken 7 is a RAM intensive game, CPU intensive game, things like that. I at some point, full transparency, we had to stop running Tekken 7 on PC. We had been going for about 6 or 7 months strong on PC, constantly doing IT work. I myself involved myself in that a bit. I'd be looking at the drivers like, hey, is this okay? I would go to like Rip's channel. Level Up Your Game has a video on like optimizing Tekken 7 for PC. Um, I did all that, and no matter like what I did, the port for Tekken 7 was just uncooperative in a tournament setting.
Mhm.
So for Tekken 8 to come out, people are gonna think like, "Oh, I'm gonna run Tekken 8 on PC." I'm not. There's no way. Um, not to like totally rag on Tekken 8 before it comes out. I'm just really skeptical of PC ports of a game designed for, the PlayStation. In the same way you would for like Persona 3, for example, where like the PC port's not perfect.
certainly. Now, thinking about things that feel a bit more certain, I suppose, like less unpredictability here. We at least know that there's another season of Tekken World Tour that's just on the horizon. Clearly, a Tekken 7 season. There was a bit of speculation whether or not we would have one more competitive season, but I feel like we're all pretty grateful to know that they've at least outline how things are going to go for what's likely, I'm going to say here, probably a final season of it on just Tekken 7. What are your thoughts on how that's been structured moving forward? I know that they've done a lot to revamp the dojo system, shifting things back to mainly offline. How do you take all of that information and apply it to how you're wanting to run events?
So I don't think this impacts me this much, like how things change back to normal,
Mm-hmm.
given our recent like tournament numbers, the overall satisfactory factory of our events. I think that if people like playing Tekken, they're going to show up to play Tekken. Tekken World Tour 2023, I think is going to be fun to say the least. They've listened to some of our complaints, and the changes that you mentioned are that there's not going to be online anymore. It's going to be like all in person. People in SoCal already live that way. Um, we live and die by offline, honestly. Like I remember, um, during the pandemic, I would host in my garage for only people that I knew. I didn't do that for like strangers. There's no way I was doing that for strangers. There's no way I was gonna just let people in that I've never met before in my life, especially when COVID was going around. So like SUMA Temple, um, all that stuff, given how I orient my events, everything offline, in person, um, if pandemic gets worse, we'll like tell people to wear masks again. Um, Stuff like that. Like I think that SoCal Tekken's gonna have a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're set for 2023. Um, I think that we're not going to see too big a change in the players participating. If anything, I honestly imagine there's going to be less people participating because for Tekken World Tour 2022, you did have online, and online means it's accessible to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But now that it's offline, you run into real world struggles such as like, hey, I gotta like drive to this place, or hey, I gotta have like the money to participate in like this event. Because most people that go in there, if you're someone like me, I enjoy playing. That's where my $15 is worth. People don't enjoy losing. Their $15 go down the drain. So stuff like that. It's kind of depressing of you to imagine that there's going to be less people, but I don't want to keep my eyes to the sky and stare at the sun
Mm-hmm.
when, it's harmful for me. Uh, Regardless, I think that as we reach Tekken World Tour Finals of 2023, that they hopefully learn from 2022,
Yeah.
and the 11-hour struggle that those players had to go through. And for people that don't know, the 11-hour struggle was going from, actually it could be more. I may have just mixed up the numbers, but it was like 9 a.m. doing last chance qualifiers up until top 8 qualifier. So you win, you basically have to win the LCQ and then go into top 8 of like the next event right afterwards from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. That's your day for finals. Hopefully they improve on that. I can only imagine that they've taken so much input by now that it would be difficult to make things harder on the players. And that's my biggest thing. Like I told you, I was raised up health oriented. I think the same with players. Like I worry about like their health, and my my hope is that things get better for them. You know what I mean? As someone who's just an event organizer, I really can't emphasize enough that player health, mental, physical, emotional, all encompassing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Should be
Absolutely.
put first. And TWT has already addressed certain things, so I'm future's looking bright
Yeah.
before we get into Tekken 8.
I feel like just for instance, from my perspective, I just trying to look optimistically at everything and really looking forward to seeing a lot of these dojo events happen again, seeing people go to their locals and be able to get points that mean something on that world tour, and hopefully culminating in an event that seems like they've learned from things. And I'm kind of hoping, again, just sort of selfishly, as I'm sure a lot of people would like to see it go to New Orleans, since that was kind of the plan in 2020, and then obviously pandemic put that aside. But yeah, I'm really hoping as well that this upcoming season they can build off of what they've done in the past and just make it better for competitors and for the organization and things alike. But just again, looking towards the future, what kind of takeaways do you have through all your time with Tekken 7, running events, competing a bit, and looking ahead towards Tekken 8? How do you personally stand with things? Like, what are your just not necessarily closing remarks with the game, because obviously it's still going, but to the point that Tekken 7 has brought you here and now, what can you tell me about how you feel that you've grown?
I think Tekken 7 has been such a positive impact on my life. Before Tekken 7, before I started competing, I was in a tough place in 2018. Um, and meeting all the people that I have now, running the events, being both on the player side and behind the scenes, I could definitely say that Tekken 7 and the people behind and with me are all probably, I would say, like the best things that have happened in the
Mm-hmm.
past 4 years. Um, it's sad to see Tekken 7 go, but I know I've said this many times, like times change, things change. And I can only put out love for the things that happen. Even if like Leroy came out, Leroy and Fakunram came out, like um that those are all like part of the roller coaster that is a 5-year-old game's life. Sorry, is it five? Came out in 2017. It's 2023 now.
Well, it also
Yeah.
depends on how you want to look at things. I mean, some people have that exposure to, pre-launch, but it's been a while, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, my closing statement is for how 5 seasons have gone, things have been pretty great.
Hmm.
I intend on still running events if possible. Um, I do want to see more people grow. Um, I still want to see all the homies after tournament because from Dropkick, I carried on that tradition. After we finish tournament, we go out to eat. It's so funny that like a group of like 30 people going out to like In and Out or like Raising Cane's and filling out the room, and they'll be like, "What happened here?" And it's not a birthday party. We're just hanging at 2 a.m. I swear, nothing suspicious.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, seeing everybody brought together. I hope to carry that on into like future iterations of the game, if possible. If
And I
possible.
know that, the community at large really couldn't be the community as it is without people like you who are willing to put a foot forward and make sure that things are organized, literally organizing events, so people can further their enjoyment of the game. And it's always really nice to hear from the tournament organizer side just how much that means to be able to bring people together in that regard. So again, I know in this episode we've had a couple technical issues, a little bit of a cutout there, and y'all may have heard my puppy barking a bit, but thank you very much for staying with us here. And Suma, just to close out here, could you share those social media channels that you had mentioned before?
Yeah, for sure. So my Twitch channel, which I stream events on for Fullerton Fights, is SoCal_Suma. Um, and then my Twitter is the name is SoCal Suma. But the handle is at Stop Ducking Suma. I don't think I got to explain in this episode anything about like the stupid things that happen behind the scenes. It is all more community oriented. Um, my YouTube handle is at SoCalSuma. I don't know if it's actually SoCalSuma1, but it says, if you look it up, it's SoCalSuma.
Hmm.
Um, and then if you see anybody who's listed as Suma Temple ever, hopefully like someone else manages to get that. Those are all just homies. Like those are all the Suma Temple boys. Shout outs to them.
Well, thank you again, Suma, for joining me on this episode of The Next Battle, and I'm glad that we were able to talk about your experiences with the game and with organizing events. And I know that I don't just speak for myself when I say I'm very much looking forward to what else you are able to bring to the table for the community. And even just as from the outside looking in, me being over here in Kentucky, I'm always very glad to see anything going on, whether it's SoCal to New York to Midwest. Always glad to see events thriving, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the same for yours. So thank you again for joining me here on this fourth episode, I believe, of the next battle. And thank you everybody for listening. I hope that you enjoyed Suma's story here. Bye, everyone.
Hi guys, and thank you, Alex.